you have this huge wealth of information to share with other people. And so that turned into a kind of a Who Am I themed article, which I then recorded video that I can put up on YouTube. That becomes the article that I post on Substack. It will become a chapter of the eventual book. So I just think that this idea of making the most of all the content you create and looking for those synergies across different components of your content is something that has really helped me.
Welcome to Wish I'd Known Then podcast. I'm Sarah Rosette.
And I'm Jamie Albright. And this week on the show we have
Matty Dalrymple.
Yes, making a return appearance. We always love having Matty on. She's so smart and she's just very professional.
You know? Yes, she is. She is. She does such a great job, and she does so much. We talk about how she does so many things and how she makes what she does go further. She gets the most out of each piece of content, which I do not do.
I do not do it either. I know.
And I just run on down the road going, what's next? I don't think about, can this do anything else? Yeah. So she gives us some tips on that. It was really good, and talked about streamlining social media and how she's using Substack too. So that's a little bit different from what we normally do, and then collaboration tips. So that's all coming up. We should mention BookFunnel is our sponsor, and we will talk about them a little bit more in a minute. So how are you?
I am fine. I just got back from vacation yesterday. Vacation in quotation marks is because we were with my daughter and her 5 children, her husband, her in-laws, and us. And so, you know, when you have 5 kids around, it's not the relaxing,
there's not a lot of like just lounging around, right?
No. But we were in Florida, and unfortunately, Bertha decided to hang out with us for a few days. So we had double red flags on the beach a couple of days, so we couldn't even get on the beach. But we were able to go to the pools, and that was fine. So we really, out of 7 days, only got four good days on the beach. The other days, we really couldn't be there, and they only were able to really get in the water 2 of those days.
Wow.
So, or we were. It was still fun. We still had a great time. We all stayed in the same house, and you know, it's just fun. And we had family pictures made, which was great.
Oh, wow.
And then I also got them to take a couple of shots just of me, because I need some new headshots. So I'm hoping some of these will work for that. So we'll see. Yeah.
Did y'all do them on the beach, the photos, or?
Yes, we did do them on the beach, and then some around the property where we were staying. Yeah. So it was great. It was really fun, and we just had a great time. How about you?
We're going out of town next week. I guess when this comes out, we'll be on our trip. So we're going to the mountains. We're doing the opposite of the beach. All I've been doing recently is just focusing on the revisions. And I've made it through about 1/4 of the book, which is good.
Oh, good.
But still 3/4 left. And working on setting up, appointments for copy editing and proofreading and all that. And I sent a message to Adriel. She was going to help me with it. And I was like, let's aim for late September, I think I said. Then I got back the dates and that they could do it. And I was like, I forgot to calculate. I was going out of town next week. And then we have other stuff going on. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to say I've had some things, I've remembered some things, some commitments I have.
Yes.
And so I will push that out and ask for a later date. And in the past, I would normally just have done it, just buckled down and got it done.
Right.
But this is part of my new trying to be more realistic and not schedule myself too tightly, Right. Yeah. Because I just can't. I could do that. I could have picked the date and just made it happen, but I think I'll be a lot less stressed if I
absolutely.
push it out a little bit further.
Stressed. Yeah.
I mean, in my mind, I'm like, okay, get this back, do all the steps to get ready to go, and then launch it before the end of the year, because, I will probably launch it to my list first, and I wanted to do that. But if I wait for the audiobook, I don't know if I'll be able to get it out, because I don't know that I want to launch anything in December or late November-ish, December. So,
I mean, if you did the week after Christmas, is usually a pretty good week, but
there's a lot going on.
Who knows now? Who knows now?
Yeah, there's a lot. Like, readers have a lot. There's a lot of advertising going on and a lot of, so it could be good or bad. But anyway, so that's all I've done is just make that decision not to kill myself doing the copy edits.
One more thing I'm going to mention. I don't have all the data, so I'm not going to, I'll just tell you what I know now. I did hire Book Talker to do 2 videos for my book, the new book. She just mentioned she was going to read it last Thursday. I'm going to spend the day reading this book. And then I saw an uptick in sales just with her mentioning it. Not a huge amount, maybe 15 more than normal. And I was like, oh, well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, then later that day, she was reading it, but she made a video the next day just saying, oh my gosh, I've sat here, this book, it's got 5 sisters, they're fiercely loyal. It wasn't even a full review. It was just a, hey, about
just
this
off
book.
the top of her head, kind of.
I sold 95 books on that day. And then the next day she did the review. No, there was a gap, and then she did the review on Sunday. All that to say, I've made back what I paid her and have made a profit. I don't know how much profit right now. We're about $100 over what I paid, which I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
But more than that, the rank on that book went from about 25,000 to 41,000. I mean, 4,100. 41,000, 4,100. And it stayed around 4,000 to 5,000 now since last Thursday, which I think just has to help. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just has to help the algorithm. I'll know more the next time I update you, but it's noon on Monday. Oh, my phone's dead. I think I've sold almost 50 books today. So she did the review yesterday.
It sounds like she hit the right audience for it.
Yes.
And it's kind of a self-cycling thing where you're like, if the right person finds it, Amazon shows it to them, they go, oh, this person likes it. And then they show it to more people like that. Yeah. That could keep it really, really moving. So that's great.
I felt like, I mean, it was not cheap, but it was reasonable. I could pay it. That was not a big deal. I did reach out to somebody else, and I really like this guy, but he's too expensive. I mean, he's with a management company, and they sent me his rates. And one Instagram video is twice the price I paid for this, and she posted on Instagram.
Yeah, she did more
Facebook,
than that. Yeah,
and TikTok. And so it's like, oh, that's a bummer. But I felt like this was something I could do. If I could find more of these in this price range, I might cut back on my ads. And just do this because it seems to have a bit of a tail. I'll know more in the next few days. But one thing I thought was interesting, she did say, when I post these videos, I find they work better and I get more interaction if the author does not immediately go in and start commenting. She said if the author waits at least 24 hours to start commenting, they seem to do better.
That probably makes sense because people would feel like it's maybe more authentic, even though she's obviously reading the book and talking about it. But that's interesting. Good to know.
I'll keep you posted. It was shocking. That's the best rank it's had in its whole life. And again, I mean, I'm just seeing what works. I mean, I'm just seeing what I can do to get visibility on this book that has not done as well as I had hoped it would do. So,
Yeah. Well, we're in, I don't know, this brave new world of book publishing where we don't know what works yet or what's working right now. So you just have to figure it out.
I will say more exposure means you're opening yourself up to more criticism.
Oh, yes. As is always the case.
There were a couple of comments that were like, I tried, it's just too depressing. Or, okay, nope, I'm not reading that. And that's okay. It's not for everybody. But again, I've not gotten any negative reviews on this book. Yeah. So if you get more exposure, you're opening yourself up. So you have to know that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a double-edged sword where you get comments, but some of them may not be, or you get broader exposure.
Yes.
And with that comes the good and the bad.
So you got to be prepared.
Well, let's see. We have no new supporters this week, but thank you to our continuing supporters.
Yes.
And if you want to support the podcast, you could go to our website, wishidknowforwriters.com/support, or find us on Substack and sign up there and get access to the backlist of supporter episodes. And we will have some new ones probably starting up in August, I think. I think haven't been able to do one in June or July, but we'll have some starting up in August. We'll get back at it. And thank you also to our corporate sponsor, BookFunnel, which just helps us out with the, keeping the lights on with all the software we use to get everything done for the podcast. BookFunnel, they do it all. They deliver reader magnets. They send out advanced copies of your books. They give you the ability to hand out ebooks at conferences, and they fulfill digital sales to readers. And they're in the business of making readers happy, which I love. I just had an email from a reader who said she purchased my book on my store, on my Shopify store, and she messaged me and said, I don't have an e-reader and I read on an Android. I've never bought an ebook before. How do I do this? And I just forwarded it to BookFunnel and I copied her on it. And I said, hey, these people are the experts. They can help you. They will take care of you. And I was like, went on with my day.
Yeah. And just trust it and knew they would handle it. That's the great thing. Like, you can send people on to customer service and things like that, but you're not always sure they're going to handle it. But absolutely, they're going to with BookFunnel.
So look for them at bookfunnel.com if you want more information. And do we have anything else?
Nope. I think that's it.
Okay. Well, here is Matty. We are really excited to welcome back Matty Dalrymple to the podcast. Hi, Matty. How are you?
I am doing great. How are you doing?
We are great. Thanks for being here again.
It's always a pleasure.
Matty Dalrymple is the author of thrillers and suspense novels, as well as suspense short stories. She is a member of International Thriller Writers and Sisters in Crime. Matty hosts 2 podcasts, the Indie Author Podcast and From Expertise to Authority. In From Expertise to Authority, Matty guides participants through a practical framework for building professional presence through 3 progressive stages to build influence, income, and long-term relevance.
So, Matty, give us an update on what's been going on with you since you were on our podcast last, I think in October of 2024.
Yeah, a lot has been going on. So I think in the October 2024 episode, I was joined by Michael Aran, who is my partner in crime. We had just come out with From Page to Platform, How to Succeed as an Author Speaker. So we were sharing information about that with your audience. And then since then, I have written a second book with Michael called Collaborate to Create, which is all about co-authoring nonfiction, because we figured we had co-authored nonfiction. Why not write a book about our experience?
Sure.
And I think on the same day that book came out, which I think was June of 2025, a co-authored book that I wrote with Mark Lefebvre came out, which was the Podcast Guest Playbook, which was, I had written a book called The Indie Author's Guide to Podcasting for Authors, which was very focused on the host perspective. Mark and I collaborated on this book that was focused on podcast guesting. And it was funny because those 2 opportunities to co-author kind of came up separately, and they were both heading toward completion at the same time. And I was like, oh my God, which one do I launch first? Which one do I launch second? And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to cram it all into one day.
Yeah.
So we launched that. And then I think that since then, Mark and I also put out a second edition of the book we had co-authored about short fiction called Taking the Short Tack, Creating Income and Connecting with Readers Using Short Fiction. That covers all the activities on the nonfiction front. And then I think that since then, I have put out one new edition of the Ann Kinnear suspense novels, the Lizzie Ballard thrillers, and I also launched a collection of my Ann Kinnear short stories.
Oh, wow.
Goodness.
Wow.
So you have been juggling a lot.
I don't know about y'all, but I took a nap before we got on here. So I'm glad.
It does sound more tiring. Saying it out loud like that, it sounds exhausting, but you plug away at it and these things happen.
That's right. That's right.
That is true. Yeah. We'll probably come back to that, juggling all these different things. Since you've been on before, we have a little bit unusual questions this time. So what's the most important lesson you learned recently?
So I would say that the most important lesson I learned recently is tied to this new platform I spun up, From Expertise to Authority. And it came about because I have, for years, I've offered consulting services to writers. And when I first spun up that service, I thought that most of those consulting engagements were going to be some flavor of, I finished a book, what should I do with it now? which some of them are. But then I started getting a concentration of clients who already had a book. They had already either published it themselves or they had worked with someone to publish it, gotten a publisher interested in it, whatever that might be. And now they were looking for ways to get the word out there. And these were all nonfiction books. And as I would talk through options with them, I would say, oh, maybe you'd want to consider guesting on podcasts as a way to spread the word. Or maybe you'd even want to consider hosting a podcast, or you could consider doing speaking engagements related to this, or maybe even partnering with someone to co-author. And I finally realized I had written books on all these topics, and it was feeling one-offs, like a menu, but not the constructed meal that you would want it to be. I realized that there was a sort of more holistic way to look at this, and that these could all feed each other in really productive ways. And that was very valuable for my own purposes, for my own career, but it was also something that I realized this kind of framework could benefit other people too.
That's very interesting. That's how the whole thing came about, just you putting it all together like that. That's so amazing.
Yeah, I just started thinking about, that there was a need for this. And then I think one of the other things maybe that wasn't a completely new learning, but that this really illustrated for me is that whenever I've written a book, it has not been primarily because I'm expecting to make big bucks from the book. It is because I'm looking for what the book makes available, like speaking engagements or like consulting engagements. And so I thought, I would love to pitch myself as a speaker on this topic. I would love to pitch myself as a consultant on this topic, and it would be great to have a book. Really was looking for a way to get my brain around all the aspects of this. And around that time, I interviewed Angelique Fawns for the Indie Author Podcast, and she was talking about how she uses Substack to support writers who are writing short fiction. And she was saying she liked it because it provided her with an outlet to get to people. She could use it almost as an email service because she was being able to communicate with the people who were interested in her work that way. And I found out that you can do a podcast through Substack. I was like, ooh, that sounds interesting, because I really wanted the impetus. I love the idea of writing articles on the topic that would help me think through this new area, and that could then form the basis of chapters in a book, and that I was doing it in a platform that would enable me to actually interact with people about this stuff, which has been super helpful.
That's amazing. What's the biggest change you've had to make in your thinking or mindset?
I think that a lot of it is around figuring out how to not only present all these things holistically, but work on them holistically and find ways to make one piece of content do multiple pieces of work.
Right.
Because that is really what enabled me to launch another podcast and the Substack and a YouTube channel and all that related to From Expertise to Authority, because I would interview people like Sarah. I found I would discover people who I was talking to them when I was like, oh, this person's story is exactly illustrating the kind of experience that I want to explore. I would put those interviews up as podcast episodes via Substack. A lot of times the interview would spark an idea that I could then parlay into an article. For example, I think one of the ideas that Sarah, you and I talked about was the idea of who am I to write a book about writing a series, or who am I to write a book about how to use tropes in mystery and thriller. Sarah, am surrounded by people who write mysteries and write series. So who am I? Forgetting that's 0.01% of the people that might be interested in this, and that you have this huge wealth of information to share with other people. And so that turned into a kind of a who am I themed article, which I then recorded video that I can put up on YouTube. That becomes the article that I post on Substack. It will become a chapter of the eventual book. So I just think that this idea of making the most of all the content you create and looking for those synergies across different components of your content is something that has really helped me.
Yeah. And when I was on your podcast, I was impressed with the way you did the podcast and then you did the article, and it all, especially I think because you're using Substack, it all combines together, and then you can reach people on Substack because it is a social media platform, and you can share your content there, and it's all built in, which is really nice. So do you like Substack? You use it quite a bit?
I just started posting, I think that in December. And so I'm still very much learning. There's definitely a learning curve with any platform, even down to the things like I would put some piece of metadata in when I was posting an article or posting a podcast episode. And then I would see it later and I was like, oh, that's what happens to that piece of metadata. That's not what I expected. Then I'd have to go back and fix it in all the other episodes. I just recently discovered that you can do this notes thing. Fortunately, I interviewed someone, Elle Griffin, who has both fiction and nonfiction content on Substack. And I was learning some stuff from her. And I was like, oh, that's great too, because it's a much nicer way of interacting with people. But I do really like it because you get the discoverability of being on a third-party platform as opposed to posting on your own website. Mm-hmm. And I think that people who go there, it's like the thinking person's social media because it's longer content. You're attracting a group of people who are willing to read longer content. And then I've gotten some of my article ideas have come from, I'll post a question out there, someone will answer it, and it was, oh, I never thought of that angle on it. Yeah. So yeah, I am really enjoying it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're very new to Substack and we're still figuring it out. And yeah, I like it because you can curate your feed a little bit. You don't have to just have stuff served to you. You can go to the people you follow and just read their things, which is nice. We don't get that choice very often in platforms anymore. Yeah. So how has this changed your business model doing this new podcast and using Substack? What else have you changed and how has it evolved?
Well, because this was a whole new suite of things I was trying to do, of course, you always have to think about what you're going to stop doing. So I had already started pulling back on other social media platforms. I was focusing pretty much exclusively on Facebook. But now I'm finding I'm even pulling back on Facebook a bit because I guess it's a convenient way for people who have been following me there for a while to let them know that a new podcast episode is, or let them know whatever a book is on sale or whatever. But I just don't find the experience interesting as a consumer anymore. And I think if you don't find the experience interesting as a consumer, it's very hard to create content for it. And I would just try to look back to judge as best I could what I was getting out of it. I'm like, what I'm getting out of it is not commensurate with the time I'm putting into it. So I really pulled back on that. And I tried to find other ways to streamline what I was doing. So for example, I do want to let people on Facebook know when a new podcast episode is up. And I used to, every day for the week of that podcast, I would put a clip up on Facebook, which was like fairly time consuming. And every once in a while, I'd have some people liking it, and every once in a while someone would comment, but I wasn't getting any sense that anybody was waiting for this stuff to show up. And so I started just having one longer clip, putting it up and then boosting it for a week. Because once I do it, I can let it run and then I don't have to be babysitting it or doing extra work those other days. So yeah, I think it is all about always just looking and seeing what is your goal, is what you're doing helping lead you to your goal? Is your goal changing? Is something that was working for you a year ago still working? I just think that's a continuous assessment process.
Yeah. So do you find that boosting the post, does that help?
It does help.
I'm assuming you keep doing it, but I've never even thought of that. That's pretty smart. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that I get more engagement if I boost it, and I'm boosting it for a tiny amount, $2 a day.
Oh, okay.
So it's not a huge investment, and it's like very dumbed down Facebook ads. So you can pick things like the country and an interest. So I always boost them to people who are interested in self-publishing. And I do get some more engagement, and I figure it's a low investment for the handful of extra people who seem to see it in comparison to when I don't boost it.
That's very interesting. We might need to think about that.
Yeah, it's worth it, like just for $1 or $2 a day. Just see if you get a little boost.
Exactly. What mistakes do you see people making as they try to transition from expertise to authority?
I think that I see people making the same mistake I was making, which is doing these things in a scattershot way. And I think that in any endeavor, this is very much a focus of my consulting is, what are your goals? And are your actions aligned with what you want to achieve? Are your goals realistic? And so the example I always use is if you've put together a history of your family history and you want to make it easily accessible to your friends and family on a platform like Amazon, then you're plan is going to look a lot different than if you want to retire on the proceeds of your work. And you can't put out history of your family on Amazon and expect to retire on the proceeds of that work. And so you have to do that kind of assessment. And I think that understanding a person's goals and understanding what you like doing. I could talk to someone who's moving into this platform or into this sort of phase of their career that I'm addressing, which is professionals who are entering a second act or sideline career. And so these are people who have probably built up a lot of expertise in their first or main career, and they want to move into kind of a different persona and a persona of authority. And in some cases, that is, I've loved my career. I've learned a lot. I want to continue being engaged. I want to continue being relevant in my area. That's one kind of thing. Another kind of thing could be, I have this day job that's paying the bills, but I have a passion that I want to move into. Maybe I'm going to leave my day job at some point and I'm going to be able to explore my passion full time. And so that's another set of goals. And just thinking through, if somebody wants to be earning money, then theoretically, speaking engagements is a way they could do that. But if they hate public speaking, probably not something they want to hammer away at. So I just think looking across the different opportunities that are available, like I think that building credibility through written content, writing articles is a great way to dip your toe in that pool. And then if you feel comfortable with that, you can expand beyond establishing your expertise to establishing more of a connection with people through things like podcast appearances or podcast hosting or speaking engagements. And then when you feel comfortable there, you can move on to another stage, which is building authority. And that's more when you're consulting with people and understanding what makes sense for each individual person to slot into each of those stages of building your presence.
Very good.
Do you find that people tend to want to jump, like they want to skip the last, like I'm an authority? Do you feel that we kind of get it out of order at times?
I'm sure that's the case. I fortunately haven't worked with people like that are making the jump. I think it's more that they're not seeing it as a path that they can plan for. They're just seeing it as jumping at whatever opportunity happens to be there. And I think in the people I've interacted with, it's more the matter of, who am I to offer this expertise? More so than people jumping the gun and saying, I've never written an article on this, but I think tomorrow I'm going to hang out my shingle as a consultant. But I'm sure those people are out there, but fortunately I haven't encountered them yet.
Good. Yeah. Your podcast is really interesting. You've had some interesting guests and interesting topics. I'm just curious, what is the most interesting or unusual pathway you've seen somebody take to go? They were going down one pathway and they've branched out into this kind of second act, like you called it.
There have been a couple, like every interview has a surprising aspect to it. So as an example, I just interviewed Jerry Williams, who is the host of the FBI Case File Review podcast. She's a retired FBI agent, and she already knew when she was still an FBI agent that eventually she wanted to write fiction and nonfiction based on her experience as an FBI agent. And she had an opportunity to become a spokesperson. I actually think this may have been, I think she was a spokesperson for the FBI and also for SEPTA, which is the Philadelphia area public transit system. And she took both or one of those jobs because she wanted the exposure that would pave the way to that eventual sideline or second act that she saw for herself. So that idea of you can ethically do things that are going to help you in your sideline or second act, even when you're still in your main career, was something that I hadn't really thought of before. There are lots of cases of where people have combined things that seem different into a sideline or second act. For example, Phil Marshall, who founded Spoken, which is the AI narration company, had background in medical transcription, and he was a novelist. And so he saw this need to say people who don't have the wherewithal to spend thousands of dollars for human narration still want to get their book out there to people who want to hear audiobooks. And so he combined those into a way that established an area of expertise that didn't even exist before. He combined those things. So I think all the interviews, there's something that I'm like, oh yeah, I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, that is interesting. It's a very interesting podcast to listen to. It's not your typical writer craft or business focused podcast. It's a different angle on it, which I think is great because it's always good to have your own angle. So you've got this second podcast. You talked a little bit about how you have fit it in and make the things you do, you make it work harder for you. So you get multiple pieces of content from it, but you're doing a lot. You're writing your fiction, you're doing all this nonfiction, you're doing collaborations. How are you juggling all this? And I know that we talked over 2 years, but still on a daily basis, how do you do this?
It all sounds very, very fabulous and well thought out up till now. But the honest truth is that I just work all the time. I work all the time. And I do that even recognizing that's probably not the best decision for me to make. I'm somebody who it can be 11 o'clock at night and I'll think, oh, I should go to bed. Oh, but there's this one task in Trello. I could just click off. No, check off. Yeah, I do this real quick. Yeah, the one learning is that it always takes longer to do anything than you think it's going to. And this is definitely one of those things where do as I say, not as I do, because I do see that when I do force myself away from my desk and I go out and walk the dog or whatever, that is where the good ideas come from. It's just constitutionally difficult for me to remember that. Right. And so I can get a lot accomplished because I'm investing a lot of time in it. But I also think that it's always a goal. I'm about to go on vacation, so I'm hoping this will be like a good kind of...
You're about to go on vacation. Are you going to work on vacation? Or are you
Absolutely. So vacations are my fiction writing time. I mean, I'm always working on fiction in one way or the other, but I try to clear my calendar so that when I'm on vacation, I only have to do the only thing I have is fiction writing, which is like a break for me.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's important to balance the checking off the tasks with making sure you're still looking strategically at your career and what you're doing.
And are your fiction readers, are they okay with this? Because some fiction readers, they expect book every season, every quarter, or every year. So how do your readers feel about that? Do they just know that you'll let them know when there's a book and they don't clamor? They leave you alone to do your nonfiction stuff?
More or less. I'm a book a year sort of person. So the only pushback I get is since I have 2 series, sometimes I get, when are you going to get to my series again? I have a favorite. When is the next book of that going to come out? Yeah. I've never been someone who published more frequently than that. I have 11 novels out now. They've gotten used to that rhythm. And it does mean certainly that I have to reintroduce myself a little bit whenever I have a new book. But yeah, I just don't think that my brain doesn't work any faster than that. My brain is definitely benefits from having time away from it. Because if I was just trying to bang away at fiction, I just wear myself out. Yeah. I tap out my brain.
It is a nice break to switch back and forth from fiction to nonfiction or fiction to podcasting, something like this, like using a different skill set.
Exactly.
Yeah. This is probably a giant question, but can you give us some collaboration tips, like maybe 4 or 5 collaboration tips, 3 or 4? Just something.
Since you've worked with multiple people too, that's different than working with one person all the time.
How can we do this the best way? I'm sure there are do's and don'ts, but...
Yeah, I think that the common theme can be that it's what is your goal and how are you going to get there? Yeah. And so when I'm working with other people, a really important part of that is making sure we have the same goal and how we're going to get there. So as an example, I was working on the podcast guest playbook basically because I wanted material that I could give to podcast guests, prospective podcast guests. And then as I started writing these up, I would think, oh, I could talk about this. Oh, I could talk about this. And very clearly it became beyond just a little guide for guests and it had book potential. And so I was pretty happy with that. But I was at Author Nation and I had lunch with Mark Lefebvre and I was telling him about that. And then we were walking back from lunch and he said, oh, by the way, if you're looking for a co-author for that book, I'd be interested in that. And I was like, yes, in fact, I am. Because I had a lot of the factual detail, but what I realized Mark could really bring was the personal stories, the illustrative stories to demonstrate the points that we wanted to make. And so in that case, I was quite far along with the manuscript at that point. So in a lot of cases, it was me just sending Mark a note saying, Mark, I need a story about dealing with a difficult radio interview, or Mark, I need a story about something you learned in the midst of an interview that you were able to implement in order to have the interview be more than it would have been otherwise. So at that point, when we were working on that, we had already co-authored a book. So we had a
a system
a bit of a
down.
system
You
down.
knew each
Yeah.
other. Yeah.
Yeah. So
And
he was
then
color commentary then.
he was color commentary. Exactly. And when I was working with Michael, so we did our second co-authored book on co-authoring. We had written From Page to Platform. And when we started out, we thought it was going to be co-authoring both fiction and nonfiction. And then as we just started outlining what we wanted to include, it quickly became clear that the tips, first of all, the tips for fiction co-authoring were quite different than the tips for nonfiction co-authoring. And it was almost going to be like two books between one set of covers.
Yeah.
And also, although Michael had quite a bit of experience co-authoring fiction, I had only ever co-authored one short story. So there weren't that many circumstances where I could say, in my experience, such and such, which would have really put an unnecessary burden on him. And so that was one of those ones that we just changed what our goal was to be, let's just focus it on nonfiction collaborations. And so, yeah, I think it's just, what's the goal? How do you want to get there? And make sure everybody's on board with that.
And always have a contract?
Yes, we would say always have a contract. Michael is someone who actually went to law school. It's a big fan
That's
of.
handy.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it really was, because our contracts are very short, but they do cover things like, what if something happens to one of us? Then our heirs, we need to know who the heir is, who should now be receiving benefits from the book we've co-authored. Right. There's the set of things that are helpful to have legally signed. And then there's just another set of things that are helpful to be just an agreement, an informal agreement, like, let's plan on having the first draft in about a month. Both of us, if in the middle of one of our books, our house flooded. So I was like, you know what? I'm not going to be getting the draft by the end of the month. And that was fine. We've both been very flexible about that. So yeah, a combination of formal and informal agreements.
That's great.
And flexibility is important, because I remember that when I was doing the book with Jennifer Hilt, we drew up a contract. And then we had a loose idea of, we'll do this for promotion. And one of the things we talked about was doing a Kickstarter. And we thought that would be great. And then that ended up, she had to move. And then I had another thing going that same time. And we just scratched that off the list. We're like, that's fine. And we were both okay with that. So yeah, sometimes you just have to roll with life's punches. Like when your house floods, you just can't keep those deadlines.
Yeah. And I think that suggests another good tip, which is just, if you are thinking of entering into a collaboration with someone, remember, it's like a creative marriage, and you're going to be in this for a long time, like way beyond just publishing the book. For years, decades, you're going to be enmeshed with each other in one way or the other. And in Collaborate to Create, we go through some of the practical things that you need to keep in mind when you're assessing a potential collaborator. But we end just by saying, and you've just got to pay attention to your gut. If you're coming up to the point of formalizing it and you're just feeling beyond just the natural butterflies of entering into a new partnership, then ignore that at your peril, because it might be highlighting a potential problem down the road.
I can also see that a lot of collaborations come together, or people get ideas for collaborations at conferences or things like that, and emotions are high. We're all loving each other. It's a big old love fest. So then you get home and maybe take a step back, sleep on it for a little bit before you sign anything, because you need to really consider who this person is, and do their values line up with your values, and do you see this business the same way? If you said yes to someone and you were, let's take a really obvious big one, you were very anti-AI and they use AI in a lot of their stuff, then this might not be a very good marriage. You need to really look at that and think about it. But at the time of talking about it and the initial idea, it's very exciting, and it's hard to sometimes you just need to take a step back and evaluate.
Yeah. There's definitely a checklist to go through, and the use or non-use of AI is definitely one of those things for sure. And I think, again, another example of where you want to make sure you're aligned is if one person is doing this because they're primarily looking for income, and another person is doing it because they're primarily looking for a calling card for other opportunities, it's not necessarily a non-starter. But maybe you divide royalties differently, because the person who's interested in income has incentive to continue running ads or researching comps or all those things. And the person who's looking for a calling card, once the book is out, may be kind of done. And if you know that ahead of time, you can say, okay, why don't you keep 60% and I'll keep 40%? Or there are ways around it as long as you identify those things early.
Yeah, that's a very good point too, because
Yeah, because I was thinking about promotion. You have your initial blitz when it comes out where you're getting the word out. But then if one person wants to continue to promote it, every month for the next 2 years, and the other person is, oh, I'm done, I'm out. That's something you need to talk about.
Yeah, I would say that I do have this rotating schedule where every month I focus on one of my nonfiction books. And I create all the Canva images, and I create the accompanying text, and I put all that out on Google Drive. Thank God for Google Drive. And I send links to either to Mark or to Michael to access that information. But honestly, they're both so insanely busy that I'm not really expecting them to sink a lot of time into this. And all these books were published under my imprint. So I feel like I'm supposed to be leading the charge on that anyway. That just seems right to me. But I will always flag them. I'll flag their name on Facebook or wherever I'm posting, so they'll see it. And then they share it. It's low impact for them. And yet I'm being able to tap into their audiences, which honestly was one of the reasons that it was attractive to me to partner up with them. They both have large committed audiences that I wanted to get access to. And if I can make it as easy as possible for them to help me spread the word to those audiences, I'm happy to do that.
This has been great. Tell everybody where they can find out about you and your books and the podcast.
Great. Thank you so much. It is always so lovely to talk with you guys. And if people are interested in my fiction, they can go to mattydalrymple.com, and that's Matty with a Y, Matty. If they're interested in my nonfiction, they can go to theindieauthor.com, and that's Indie with a Y, INDY. And if they go to theindieauthor.com/authority, they will find all the information about From Expertise to Authority, and where they can go to read the articles and watch the videos and sign up for my Substack and all the other good stuff.
Yeah, that's
perfect.
Excellent.
Right. Yeah, we will have those links in the show notes, and you can find those at wishidknownforwriters.com. And if you want to support the podcast, you can go to that same link /support. You can also find us on Substack. And don't forget to check out BookFunnel. Thanks for listening today, and we'll see everybody next week.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.